Welcome to Xi Jinping Briefing. The content of the briefing includes Xi to meet Biden on U.S. soil, 5 things to watch for at 10th Superpower Summit. Stagnation Nation, UK economy flatlines. Chinese PhD students at top universities given ideological training before entering UK. As Biden deepens India ties, specter of possible Trump return looms over US ally. Biden and Xi to meet next week for the first time in a year. Xi to meet Biden on US soil, 5 things to watch for at 10th Superpower Summit. CBC. The meeting between U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese leader Xi Jinping at the Asia-Pacific Summit in San Francisco next week is being billed as an effort to establish a floor in their relationship and prevent it from collapsing in 2024. The two countries have had an unusually tense relationship this year, with senior officials ceasing communication for months after the spy balloon affair. One pressing issue for the U.S. is fentanyl, with the U.S. accusing Chinese-based companies of supplying Mexican drug cartels with the chemicals needed to make it. The U.S. has also repeatedly asked China to resume military communications, something China has been reluctant to do. Other issues include trade restrictions, intellectual property theft, human rights abuses, foreign interference, and the Taiwan situation. Xi has ordered China's military to put all its effort into war preparations due to the Taiwanese election in January, so a priority for him will be reassurance from Biden that the U.S. does not support Taiwanese independence. Stagnation Nation, UK economy flatlines. Financial Times. New data shows that the UK economy is stagnating and productivity is at alarming levels, highlighting the challenges faced by Chancellor Jeremy Hunt ahead of his autumn statement. Gross domestic product, GDP, was unchanged in the 3 months to September, and the monthly rise of 0.2% was better than expected. The figures leave the UK economy towards the bottom of the league table of major economies relative to pre-pandemic levels, with some economists predicting a long period of stagnation. Hunt's statement on November 22 is expected to focus on unlocking investment, reforming public services, and getting people back into work. Chinese PhD students at top universities given ideological training before entering UK. Telegraph. Chinese students who have been awarded scholarships to study at UK universities through the China Scholarship Council, CSC, are required to undergo ideological training by the Chinese Communist Party before they enter the UK. The scholarship program, which is primarily for PhD students in science and technology, sees Chinese officials review the political ideology of applicants. The CSC, which is part funded by UK taxpayers, has the authority to remove students who fail to adhere to strict ideology or to act in the interests of the Chinese government. The CSC also requires master's students to engage in online training on Xi Jinping thought, the philosophy of the Chinese president. As Biden deepens India ties, specter of possible Trump return looms over U.S. ally. South China Morning Post. The U.S. and India have agreed to discuss the co-production of Stryker armored vehicles as part of their expanding security partnership. The move would help India reduce its dependence on Russian weapons. The Stryker is an 8-wheeled armored vehicle that can transport infantry and utilize various weapons, engineering, and electronic systems. The agreement came during the 2+2 U.S.-India ministerial consultations in New Delhi, which brought together top diplomats and defense officials from both countries. The discussions also covered other areas of cooperation, including the purchase of MQ-9B drones by India. The deepening partnership between the U.S. and India comes as both countries face challenges from China. India has felt compelled to align more closely with the U.S. and its allies as China's military and economic influence grows. India is also a member of the Quad, a U.S.-led security bloc that includes Japan and Australia, aimed at maintaining peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. Biden and Xi to meet next week for the first time in a year. Washington Post. President Biden will meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping next week on the sidelines of an economic conference in San Francisco. The meeting comes as the U.S. and China attempt to stabilize their relationship following a series of crises, including China's aggressive response to Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan and the U.S. military's shoot-down of a Chinese spy balloon that crossed the United States. However, the meeting also comes at a time when conflicts in Europe and the Middle East threaten to divert the U.S. attention away from managing its competition with China. White House officials have insisted that the Biden administration remains focused on Asia, with a number of top administration officials currently in the Indo-Pacific region. The meeting between Biden and Xi is expected to focus on crisis communication channels, climate change, macroeconomic stability, and areas of disagreement such as human rights, disputes in the South China Sea, and potential Chinese election interference in Taiwan. Biden is also expected to ask for China's help in diplomatic efforts with Iran to prevent the Israel-Gaza war from escalating. Meta's China quest thaws thin layer of dense cube. Reuters breaking views. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, is planning to sell virtual reality headsets in China, 14 years after the social media platform was banned in the country. The move allows Meta to generate revenue in a less contentious way and puts pressure on the US government to soften its stance on Chinese technology. The sale of VR headsets is seen as an easier way to enter the Chinese market compared to social media, which has been subject to censorship issues. The move poses a challenge for US President Joe Biden, who is considering whether to ban TikTok, as it may be more difficult to take an aggressive approach if Meta succeeds in China. How Anthony Albanese's massive Pacific Pact will irk Beijing. The Sydney Morning Herald. Australia has signed a historic treaty with the Pacific microstate of Tuvalu to allow for the orderly evacuation of the entire nation under threat of destruction by climate change. The treaty establishes that all Tuvaluans will be entitled to permanent residency in Australia, with an initial limit of 280 Tuvaluans per year accepted as permanent immigrants. The treaty also commits Australia to helping Tuvalu defend itself against rising sea levels, with land reclamation works that will add 6% to the land area of the main island, and establishes a security pact, with Australia promising to help Tuvalu in case of a major natural disaster, a health emergency, or foreign military aggression. The treaty also includes an Australian veto over any future security deal between Tuvalu and another state, such as China. The treaty has been praised as a beacon of hope for Tuvalu and sets an important mechanism in place for other climate-vulnerable nations in the Pacific region. Biden to press Xi on reopening military contacts at San Francisco summit. Financial Times. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping will meet next week ahead of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum. The summit will be their second in-person meeting as leaders and comes amid rising tensions between the two powers over issues including Chinese military activity near Taiwan and U.S. efforts to stop China from securing cutting-edge American technology. The leaders are expected to discuss reopening military communication channels that China shut last year after U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. U.S. officials stressed that the summit did not mark a change in U.S. policy towards China but a recognition that effective channels of communication were needed. Nothing off limits as Xi Jinping to travel to California for Joe Biden high-stakes summit. Telegraph. Chinese President Xi Jinping is set to meet U.S. President Joe Biden in a high-stakes summit in California next week. The meeting is hoped to help stabilize the strained Sino-American relationship, which has been at its lowest point in years. The leaders have not met since last year, and tensions have escalated over various issues, including the expansion of China's nuclear arsenal, trade disputes, and Taiwan. During the meeting, Biden plans to discuss a range of issues, including the Israel-Hamas conflict, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and human rights. The leaders are expected to have a lengthy meeting with teams of officials from both sides. Biden, Xi set to meet November 15 on sidelines of APEC summit. Bloomberg. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping will meet on November 15 to discuss issues affecting their countries' relationship. The meeting aims to stabilize ties between the two nations and clear up misperceptions. While no clear breakthroughs are expected, discussions will involve open lines of communication, military issues, artificial intelligence, fentanyl, and detained Americans in China. The U.S. also hopes to reach an agreement with China to crack down on the chemical ingredients used to make fentanyl. And that's a wrap for today's news. We covered a range of topics, from the upcoming Biden-Xi summit, to the UK economy, ideological training for Chinese students in the UK, the deepening US-India partnership, Meta's entry into the Chinese market, Australia's treaty with Tuvalu, and more. Now, let's dive into some analysis. The Biden-Xi summit is certainly one to watch. With tensions between the US and China at an all-time high, this meeting is seen as an opportunity to establish a floor in their relationship and prevent it from collapsing. The two leaders will likely discuss a wide range of issues, including fentanyl, trade restrictions, intellectual property theft, human rights abuses, and the Taiwan situation. It'll be interesting to see if any breakthroughs are made or if tensions continue to escalate. Meanwhile, the UK economy appears to be stagnating, with productivity at alarming levels. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt will have his work cut out for him as he prepares for his autumn statement. Unlocking investment, reforming public services, and getting people back into work will likely be key focuses. In other news, it's been revealed that Chinese students awarded scholarships to study at UK universities are required to undergo ideological training by the Chinese Communist Party. This raises questions about academic freedom and the influence of foreign governments on UK campuses. The deepening partnership between the US and India is also significant, as both countries face challenges from China. India's closer alignment with the US and its allies is a response to China's growing military and economic influence. With tensions in the Indo-Pacific region on the rise, this partnership will be crucial in maintaining peace and stability. Moving on to technology, Meta's decision to sell virtual reality headsets in China is an interesting development. It allows Meta to generate revenue in a less contentious way and puts pressure on the US government to soften its stance on Chinese technology. This move could have implications for the ongoing debate over banning TikTok. Lastly, Australia's treaty with Tuvalu to address climate change is a beacon of hope for vulnerable nations in the Pacific. The treaty not only allows for the orderly evacuation of Tuvaluans, but also establishes land reclamation works and a security pact with Australia. This sets an important mechanism in place for other climate-vulnerable nations in the region. And that's a wrap for today's news analysis. Remember, these are just my thoughts and observations. I'd love to hear what you think. Do you have any thoughts on the Biden-Xi summit, the UK economy, or any of the other topics we discussed? Let's keep the conversation going. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.